Hello guys, welcome to another video, and we have another new unique that was added in Path of Exile to Dawn of the Hunt. It's another returning unique, that's Cloak of Defiance. Now, the moment I saw this new unique on the list of new additions for Dawn of the Hunt, I was intrigued to see exactly what stats it would have, because Cloak of Defiance in PoE1 grants the Mind over Matter keystone, which is 40% of damage taken from mana before life in PoE1. But in PoE2, this keystone makes all damage be taken from mana before life. So the possibility of accessing this keystone on a build on the opposite side of the tree would be interesting, but PoE2's Cloak of Defiance doesn't actually grant the keystone. Instead, it provides a similar benefit to what the keystone does in PoE1. Something else to note here is that PoE2's version of this unique is not an evasion energy shield hybrid body armor, and is instead a pure energy shield base type. So, Cloak of Defiance grants an okay amount of energy shield and a decent maximum mana roll, but that's not why you'll be wanting to make use of this item. It also grants a good chunk of increased mana regeneration rate, which is an important comparison with the Mind over Matter keystone that halves all of your mana recovery over time. So, while Cloak of Defiance only provides a fraction of mana before life compared to the 100% of the Mind over Matter keystone, it doesn't impose that huge downside on your mana recovery. Instead, it boosts it up a little in terms of mana regeneration. And then, of course, the modifier that you're choosing to use this item for, the 30% of damage taken from mana before life. This is a good chunk of mana before life, and this stat is actually accessible elsewhere on the passive tree in much smaller amounts, not just on the Mind over Matter keystone. Because unlike in PoE1, this item doesn't grant the Mind over Matter keystone, and it's instead an alternative option to obtain a good amount of mana before life without taking on the downside of the keystone, that being the loss of half of your recovery over time for your mana. So, if we take a look at the passive skill tree, there's 4% of damage taken from mana before life on each of these small nodes here, leading to the adverse growth notable. Then there's the mental perseverance notable over here for another 10% of damage taken from mana before life. And then over on the opposite side of the tree, in the dexterity intelligence area of the passive skill tree, there's another 4% on each of these small nodes, leading to a further 8% on the lucidity notable. Now that's a total of 34% of damage taken from mana before life, which is really good. That's already 64% in combination with Cloak of Defiance. However, this is PoE2, so unique modifiers can have improved magnitude with lucky corruption outcomes. In fact, Cloak of Defiance's mana before life modifier can roll up to 37% with a perfect 22% positive modifier magnitude corruption outcome. Not 20%, not 21%, it has to be the maximum positive modifier magnitude corruption of 22%, and then it will be multiplied from 30% up to 37% damage taken from mana before life. Now, that's pretty impressive. That combined with the tree nodes, you'd already be up to 71% of damage taken from mana before life. But there's more. In PoE2, you can actually roll this stat on basic Sapphire jewels, and the modifiers roll up to 4%. You can see where this is going. Because of the existence of the new Cloak of Defiance in PoE2, it's actually possible to reach 100% of damage taken from mana before life without using the Mind over Matter keystone. And that's kind of crazy, because the whole concept of Mind over Matter, that being the keystone, is you gain this huge upside of all of the damage being taken from your mana before your life, but you also take on the giant downside of halving your mana recovery. But with enough investment, you can actually reach 100% without taking on that downside. But how much investment are we talking about? Well, with all of the nodes on the tree that we just mentioned, and a corrupted Cloak of Defiance for 34% of damage taken from mana before life, you'd have a total of 68% of damage taken from mana before life. That means you'd need 8 max roll jewels for 4% of damage taken from mana before life each to reach exactly 100%. 8 jewel sockets on the tree, especially after the removal of some of those jewel sockets in the most recent patch, that is a lot of points spent to reach all of those locations. However, we have the newly added Lich Ascendancy for the Witch, and the Lich has the Crystalline Phylactery, which is a jewel socket on the Ascendancy, and it also has 100% increased effect of the modifiers on that jewel, so this is essentially worth 2 jewel sockets without spending the points to reach one. meaning that with 4% of mana before life dual socketed in the Crystalline Phylactery, you now only need 6 dual sockets to reach 100%. So here's a basic skeleton tree for pathing to the mana before life nodes and all of the needed sockets. Mental Perseverance here is anointed on our amulet. And then we have each of these dual sockets for 4% of mana before life on each of the socketed jewels. We also have all of the other nodes that were discussed earlier. And then because PoE2 doesn't have the functionality for Crystalline Phylactery just yet, we have those modifiers simulated here in the custom config. And if we head over to the calcs, we can see right here that we have exactly 100% of damage taken from mana before life, without the Mind Over Matter keystone specced on the tree. Now, something to mention about the Lich, of course, is that it does also have an interesting mana stacking branch in the form of Necromantic Conduit and Blackened Heart, where you can essentially stack a bunch of mana as you would already be doing with a 100% mana before life setup, and then you gain a huge amount of extra damage as chaos from Unholy might scaling. But there's something else to discuss with this setup, and that is mana recoup. The Adverse Growth notable provides 20% of damage taken recouped as mana, and over here, the Mind Eraser notable provides a further 6%. So you can get 26% mana recoup on the tree. Then you can also get a huge amount of mana recoup on your amulet. It actually goes up to 24% on a max roll. You can get another 4% there from mana catalysts. And lastly, and likely the most important piece there, is Midnight Braid, which is a unique belt that provides 50% of damage taken recouped as mana, and that can actually go up to 61% with a max corruption. I just have 58% here on this example character. And if we head over to the calcs once again, you can see that I have 112% mana recoup. So 112% of the damage that's taken from hits is going to be recovered over 8 seconds following the hit. And if you were using the Mind Over Matter keystone, that recoup recovery would actually be halved because of the 50% less recovery rate modifier, which is brutal. But the crazy thing here about this is that you actually have easy access on the tree to a multiplier to all of your mana recovery, right here, the Arcane Blossom notable. 15% increased mana recovery rate. This one multiplies all of our mana recovery over time. That's mana regen, mana recoup, or even mana flasks, as long as they're not instant. And if we go back to the calcs once again, you can see the multiplier right there. 128.8% effective mana recoup. That is crazy. So if you can build enough of a mana pool with this kind of setup, you're going to be extremely tanky. You can scale your normal mana regeneration up really high, and you can have the recoup to rely on when you do get hit. And I haven't even mentioned the fact that you can actually just click Chaos Inoculation if you want to become immune to chaos damage and bleeding, since you have 100% mana before life, and damage that gets past your energy shield will go straight to your mana instead. Now, one thing to mention here is that the Eldritch Battery Keystone might seem like it's a good idea. Converting all of your energy shield into mana sounds good, but this keystone now has the downside of doubling your mana costs following the most recent patch, which on its own might be manageable, but then the Lich's Crystalline Phylactery imposes a 50% more mana cost if you have no energy shield. So these will multiply together for an effective triple mana cost of your skills. Probably not a good idea. Now, I will mention that it's possible to do this on another Ascendancy. For example, the Stormweaver is the obvious one, of course, but you will need to reach 2 additional dual sockets, which is another 13 passive points spent on this current tree. Probably not worth it. There's also the Titan for 50% increased effect of small passives, which lowers the amount of jewels required by 2, but then you need to start at the warrior area of the tree, so you spend all of those save points just reaching the top of the tree, and you're also a Titan, so not ideal for the other node options. Anyway, that's pretty much it. I just wanted to make a video about this new unique and the 100% mana before life tech that's possible right now, and I think it's pretty fun. Even with Archmage nerfed, I think you can do some fun stuff on Lich with Unholy might scaling for damage instead. Thanks for watching this video, and as always, stay tuned and stay safe.